Central to the story of Somewhere Beyond the Sea is a town debate over the future of a landmark that's on the hills above St Ives. It's an old parsonage, and one of its former incumbents was a lady called Elinor Carne. Now, Elinor was a parson's wife, but she was also an astronomer, keen astronomer, and she built her own little wooden observatory in the grounds of the parsonage where her husband worked and where they lived. And she discovered a star. But at the time when she reported her findings, because she was a woman, because she was a lowly parson's wife, they just dismissed her claims, and they wouldn't take her seriously. And a few years later, a man called William, another astronomer who was living and working in Plymouth, discovered the star, and for years and years and years it was attributed to him. About 10 years before the start of this book, Serin's dad discovered Elinor Carne's journals. He'd heard stories about this parson's wife who discovered a star. They'd kind of been passed down through the community, but he'd never found any evidence of it. And then a lady gave him Elinor's journals, and the date in her journal predated this sighting that the star had been attributed to. And so for the last 10 years, Serin's dad has been fighting to get Elinor the recognition that she deserved, that she was a really important figure in British astronomy. I wanted to write a story that harked back to the past, and I wanted to talk about the changing opinions of women. For many years, women weren't given the credit for what they did. A lot of the really famous female astronomers that we know, people like Mary Somerville and Caroline Herschel, for years were called the helpers of male astronomers, without being attributed their own incredible discoveries. I wanted to do it as well because you've got a young girl, Nessie, in the story who has aspirations and wants to be a scientist and wants to discover things. And so there's a parallel between her and Elinor Carne in the book, which I actually didn't plan. I just had this idea that there had to be something else, there had to be another element, and there had to be a reason why Serin's dad was so passionate about saving where Elinor's from. But then when I started writing, I realised that actually there was a difference between how she'd been seen and how Jack wants to bring up his daughter. Also, Serin has kind of inherited the passion about Elinor Carne, and while she wasn't leading the campaign to save the parsonage until her father passed away, she's always felt an affinity with the astronomer. She's grown up for the last 10 years being passionate about Elinor Carne, first because her father was passionate about it, but then discovering her own and really feeling that she's a friend. She's so passionate that Elinor should be remembered. And so by saving the parsonage and preserving it for generations and turning it into a place where people can go and learn about her, she feels that is the best way to honour Elinor.